Good day, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and welcome to my weekly episode. This is episode 137 for October the 19th, 2021. So let's get right into it. First project that I completed this week is a project that has been in the making for over 2 years. And what I mean by that is it is one of my UFOs. Now, this was a Bargello quilt. And if you're not familiar with the Bargello style, it basically strips the fabric sewn together in such a way that it gives the illusion that there is curvature in your piecing, but it's all straight piecing. It's a really neat design, and there's an awful lot of things you can do with it depending on your color combinations and things like that. Well, I did this Bargello quilt in a class pre-COVID, so it's been over 2 years ago when I took this class. And I've had the top just sitting around waiting to be quilted. Now, of course, the reason I didn't really get around to quilting it was because I was going to quilt it on my domestic machine, and this is a fairly large quilt. And so, well, you know what I mean. Pushing all that fabric through your sewing machine can be a bit of a chore, so you got to build yourself up to it, right? But now that I had the Lucy, now I can get rid of my UFOs, or get them done. Now, 2 weekends ago was Thanksgiving here in Canada, and I was at my sister's for dinner. And I said to my niece and nephew, both of them, they're both young adults now, still live at home. Story for another time. I asked them what their favorite colors were and if they'd like a quilt, and they seemed to be favorable to that. So my niece's favorite color is purple, my nephew's is blue. Good choice. Just like his uncle. I love blue too, as you well know. So I went through my stash of UFOs and I found the Bargello. And the Bargello, although not strictly in purple, it does have purple in it. And it's a good sized quilt for a bed. So I thought, okay, let's get this one onto the machine, get it all layered, and let's quilt it. And so I did. And here is the end result. So I finally finished one of my UFOs, and I was able to quilt this on my Lucy. I used a basic scribbles design on a Pantograph. And this is a Bargello. And I made this in a class back, well, pre-COVID. And it's just been sitting around waiting to be completed. So I took the opportunity of having a long arm now to do so. And this is going to be a Christmas gift to my niece. Her favorite color is purple, and although this has many colors in it, the wide outside border is in purple. And I think it's a good size. I think it measures out to about 67 by 84. So that should look nice on her bed or wherever she wants to keep it. I hope she likes it. I think it turned out really nice, and I'll just do a close-up of the quilting so you can get a sense of it. As I said, it was a Pantograph, so yes, it looks pretty neat. I think it looks really cool, and it just reinforces why I bought a long arm, and I'm very happy that I did so. So I hope she likes this, and now I've got to get on to my nephew's quilt, which again is another UFO, but I need to get it up on Lucy and get it quilted. Also, I went out last week and I was a little antsy. Walter was on a 3-day workshop where he was learning about how to, alter clothing, other tips and tricks and everything like that for sewing garments. And that was with Ron Collins. And if you're interested in that, there is a whole episode of So Chatty. We just did it. It's up and ready to go. And it explains everything that Walter did, the whole show. So he was very, very pleased with the classes that he took. But, of course, I was at home alone working on my projects, and I felt I needed a little retail therapy. So I got in my car and I went to a place that's about a half hour north of me called Quilter's Cupboard to look at their fabric. And I had a pattern in mind as well when I went up there. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But needless to say, I went up there. I picked up a lot of fat quarters in batik. And I also happened to see this kit they had all made up for doing a Christmas table runner. Now, one of my friends from my art journaling group, they had mentioned to me that she would love to have a Christmas table runner in more traditional colors. Well, I saw this table runner and I got thinking, that one might be kind of nice. Now, it doesn't have traditional Christmas colors per se. There is reds, there is greens, but there's also blacks and silvers and things like that in it as well. So I picked up the kit and I worked on it this weekend. I actually started it on Saturday and I finished it on Sunday. Well, no, I finished it yesterday, Monday. Get my days mixed up. And I think it turned out pretty good. Now, I did do a combination of quilting using my embroidery machine and my domestic because this was a small piece and I couldn't really see the point of, setting it all up on the long arm for something this size. I could have, but I didn't. And it was an opportunity, excuse me, frog and throat. It gave me an opportunity to revisit doing quilting on my embroidery machine. Now, this is a small piece, so it's easy enough to do. But anyways, I did get it done. A real frog in my throat. I did get it done, and I posted it on Facebook. And I sort of was teasing this person. I wanted to see if she was serious about wanting this table runner. So she said she really liked it. And I had put up there on Facebook that I didn't know whether I was going to keep it or give it away. And she sort of said, well, she'd take it. So I contacted her and said, if you want it, it's yours. So as of Thursday, she's dropping by to pick it up. And I hope she'll be very happy with it. So I thought I'd show you what the final product looks like. So here's a little clip that I made about it. So I just finished this Christmas table runner. It's called the Christmas Ribbon Table Runner, I think. It was made from a kit, so all the fabrics came with it. And it was pretty simple to do, but there are a lot of pieces and a lot of steps to this. Now, if you take a look at the quilting, I did something a little different, something I've done before. If you look into this area right here, in this center section, and there are 3 of these center sections, I used my embroidery machine and a pattern that had some holly leaves in it. Now, they're kind of difficult to see. If you look up here, you can see the outline of one of the holly leaves, and there's some more down in here. But I didn't fill the whole thing with the whole table runner with just that pattern. What I did do, over here you can see, is I did some walking foot wavy lines along the edges, and just pull it down here. And along the point at the top, I did the same thing. So I think it turned out actually quite nice. I am debating whether I'm going to give this away as a Christmas gift. I do have a friend who requested way back when I was cleaning up my sewing room, Christmas table runner. She said she'd liked it in more traditional colors. Well, there are some of the traditional colors in here, but there is some dark colors too. Well, almost black in it, which I think makes it pop. So I don't know. I might offer that to her if she'd like it or not. Or I might just keep it for myself. I kind of really like the way it turned out. We'll see. So that takes me to what's coming up next, what's happening. And we're off today at about 10 o'clock this morning. Right now it's about 6:11 in the morning. I want to get this together and up before we left. We're off to Whirls and Swirls, which is our local long arm APQS dealership, and to take our one-day class that comes with buying the new long arm to learn all about Lucy. And we could have had this class earlier than now. We've had Lucy now for what, a month, I guess it's been. And Tracy at Whirls and Swirls recommended we don't take the class immediately, that give it a few weeks, let us play with the machine, because she said the class would mean much more to us. And I think I do agree with that philosophy as well, because I have learned quite a bit about Lucy since we got her by experimenting and using her. But I am sure today I'm going to learn a lot more that I didn't know. So we're off to that later on today. And so that's all today. And then the rest of the time, well, I don't know. I think I'm getting pretty much saturated with making things for Christmas, although I do love making things for Christmas. I really do. But I think it's time to turn my attention to some other quilt projects. Well, one of those projects is to get the rest of my UFOs quilted, get those out of my hair. Like I said, some of them have been sitting there for over 2 years. So it's time to get the lead out, get out Lucy, well, Lucy's always out, and do them. So what else? Well, speaking of Lucy, I have a little demo today showing you a pantograph on my Lucy and how I use it. Now, this is not really a detailed tutorial. It just gives you a taste for this. And I know probably many of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to doing a pantograph on your long arm. But some of you may not be aware of that. So here's my little demo of using a pantograph. This week's demo is one that's related to my, well, not related, is to do with my long arm, my Juicy Lucy. And you can see I have a quilt already on my Juicy Lucy. I'm working on this right now. I'm only halfway through the quilting of it, but I am using a pantograph for this design. Now, this is a quilt that's in my UFO section of quilts, and I made this quilt in a class at Ultimate Sewing about 2 years ago, pre-COVID, and I just never got around to quilting it because it is a very large quilt. I'm just going to step back so you can see how big this quilt is. This is going to be a gift. I'm going to give this to my niece, whose favorite color is purple. So there is purple in this, and I'm actually quilting it with purple thread. You can see it just peeking up over there on the edge. But what I want to show you today is how I'm doing this quilting. And I'm just going to talk about pantographs. This is a pantograph, and there's glare from my lights overhead, so sorry about that. A pantograph is basically a long scroll of paper with a design on it, and on the back of the long arm, this is laid out on this table at the back. Now, the reason there's a glare on this table right now is because there's a piece of plastic that the pantograph fits under there. You get a little better look at it there, I think. And that's just so you can write on it with a dry erase marker and clean it off later. And there are reasons you might want to do that. But essentially, this is rolled out here on the table, and there is a laser light, which you can't see right now, but what I'm going to do, this is the back, I'm going to turn on my power bar and turn on my machine. And there we go. And now you should be able to see this little red dot right here, and it's coming from that. That's the laser light. Now, right now, it's set up for me to carry on with the next row, and I'm not going to do that because I can't hold on to the camera and do that at the same time. But basically, you just trace around those dark lines on this pattern and work your way to the end. And then there is a method you use for rolling the quilt ahead so that you have the right spacing between each row of quilting. And that's what this little piece of painter's tape is for. So when I get down here, my needle stops at number 1. I stop it at 1. I advance the quilt so that the laser light, I watch for the laser light, comes down here to number 2. And then I base the sides of my quilt and away I go. I start back and move my way to the other end along here. And that's essentially how a pantograph works, and you can get them in literally hundreds of different designs. In fact, I have about 8 different designs on order from a place that's a great source for pantographs called Urban Elements. Elements is spelt with a Z on the end of it, or for the Americans, a Z. And you can see here on my quilt, the back of my quilt is this mottled blue color, and I am using I'm using a different color thread in my bobbin. I'm using a light blue, so you will see the quilting on the back of it, but it will be more subtle. But that's how you do a pantograph. I love doing pantographs. They are a little boring after a while because you're going over the same pattern back and forth, and it doesn't take a lot of skill to use a pantograph. Mainly, it's learning how to set it up properly. But for those people who are not, and I'm one of them, who are not comfortable with free motion quilting on their long arm, this is a nice substitute. It also does build muscle memory as well, because as you're going through this repeatedly, these curves and things, they get just a little better. So that will translate into what you might want to do when you're doing free motion quilting. So I think this is going to turn out really nice, and I think I'll probably finish it up today as far as the quilting is concerned. And then I just have to square up the quilt and put on my binding. So as time goes by and I learn more about my Lucy, I will be doing more things with Lucy to show you as well. Okay, so that takes us to a subscriber's quilt of the week. And this is one from somebody who's not strange to us here, a good friend of the channel and of me as well. I consider her a good friend. And that's Jean Eubanks, or as I call her, Jeannie, or as she likes to be referred to. And I have her latest creation to share with you right now. This week's quilt of the week from one of my subscribers is one from a person who's not unfamiliar to us, but my good friend, Jean Eubanks. And Jeannie sends along this quilt, and she says, I made this quilt for my grandson's friend who was going to college. He's a gifted pianist and was pursuing his music. So let's take a closer look at Jeannie's creation here. And I'll just blow it up a little bit. And it is very, very nice. And I see that she has put in some music blocks in here as well. I'm looking at her quilting. It's over here on the side. And I'm just wondering if Jeannie did this as free motion or if she took it out to a long armor, because it looks very nice. Now the quilting is a little bit on the subtle side, but I think that's on purpose because I would say she wanted the music blocks to show up the strongest in this quilt. The color combination is very masculine, so I think it is something that would appeal to a young man. And not only that, but I think these colors are probably very appropriate for a young man who's off to college because, well, let's face it, young men in college are not the cleanest creatures on the face of the planet when it comes to maintaining their rooms. So, you know, there could be the occasional whatever spilt on this quilt. So, you know, it won't show the marks. It's very forgiving. Okay. So if you get your beer on it or whatever, it should be okay. But it's very, very lovely. And I'm just noticing here in the top and the bottom, there is some fabric, which I think has words in it. And unfortunately, I can't blow it up anymore to make it a little bit clearer. I'm not sure what that is. It could be something to do with music. I'm sure it probably does. But overall, I think he probably loved this quilt. Thanks, Jeannie, for sending that to us. So that takes me to the YouTube channel of the week. And this one I found really helpful. And I stumbled upon it by accident. It's called Amy Quilts. And it has a great variety of information about tricks and techniques and things, you know, generally that we as quilters should know. I discovered her when I was doing a search for something. I can't remember exactly what it was I was looking for, but you know, I go to YouTube a lot for instruction. When there's something I don't know how to do, I will go to a site and find out how to do it. That's what YouTube is great for. So anyways, I came across Amy and I'm going to share her YouTube channel with you. This week's YouTube channel of the week is called Amy Quilts, and I may have reviewed this lady's website sometime in the past, but I don't really remember. But I have revisited it, and I find it very, very useful. Now, she has a lot of different videos about maintaining your sewing machine, troubleshooting your sewing machine, but also how to do different types of free motion quilting using your domestic machine, and lots of tips and tricks. But the best way that I can show you what you might find on here is to go to Amy Quilt's playlists. And if we look at that, you can see she has 4 playlists, and this basically sums up what this YouTube channel is all about. Janome sewing machine tips. So obviously, if you're a Janome user, you would probably want to check that out. So simple tips. So if you're just starting out in sewing, there's probably some information there that you'll find very useful. Free motion quilting, ruler work, and free motion quilting. So if you're into ruler work or you're into free motion quilting with your domestic machine, then I think this YouTube channel will be of a great help to you. So you may want to check this out. She has many videos on here, so there's just a wealth of information for you. So that's Amy's Quilts. So what's on my vision board this week that I want to share with you, something that I want to do very soon? Well, this is a pattern called the AviaTrill Medallion quilt. And this pattern, the link to this pattern was sent to me by Cheryl Hogan. Cheryl, you may remember, has been one of my interviewees on the Idiot Quilter Presents. And she had sent me a picture of this quilt. And I thought it was a great looking quilt, like what she had done. And I did show that a week or two ago to you as well. So I got my hands on the pattern. And that is one reason why I went up to the quilter's cupboard. I want to get fabrics for this, which I'm going to show you in a moment. First, here's the pattern I'm talking about. This week's quilt pattern off my vision board is one that I can't wait to get started on because it looks so interesting. This was actually a quilt pattern that was done by one of my subscribers, Cheryl Hogan, and I asked her where I could get this pattern, and so she put me onto this particular site. And I'll list the site in the show notes below where you can pick this pattern up. It's one by Elizabeth Hartman. Now, I've seen some of her patterns before, and probably you have as well, because she's famous for ones that feature animals like llamas and bears and things like that, butterflies as well. In fact, I think I have one of her patterns for a butterfly quilt, a small one, which I've never got around to doing. I should revisit that. But in the meantime, this is the quilt I'm talking about. It's called the AviaTrill Medallion. And I think it's really cool. Let's see if I can get a closer picture of this. Here we go. So this is the pattern. And you can download this pattern as a PDF. The cost is $16 American from this particular site. And yeah, it looks like a sampler quilt in many ways, although I'm not really sure if it is. Now, it looks like this was made with solids in the pattern picture. I think I might be tempted to do it more in batiks or maybe just make it scrappy. I think it would lend itself very easily to a scrappy quilt. So this is one that I want to get to very soon because I think it's just great. And I thank Cheryl Hogan for sending me the information about this particular pattern. And here are the fabrics I'm going to use in it. It calls for 25 fat quarters. So there are 25 fat quarters in this basket, as you can see. I love the way that some places fold these into these little triangles for display. It makes them very appealing to buy, you know. It's all part of marketing, I guess. But these are the colors I'm going to use. So it will be somewhat scrappy, but you can see I've lean towards, excuse me, that frog is back. I'm leaning towards primarily cooler colors as well. So I think these will look really great in that style of quilt. And just to let you know what I paid for these, because things are going up in price, of course, they're using the COVID as an excuse. I don't believe it's because of COVID. I just believe it's because people want to businesses want to gouge us and they'll use any opportunity, but that's a political discussion and that's not in the focus of this episode. So anyways, they were $5.50 a piece. I found that pricey for fat quarters, even if they are batiks. All their fat quarters are $5.50. And I'm used to paying about $3.50, $3.75 at Ultimate Sewing. But the only reason I didn't go to Ultimate Sewing to get these is because they don't really have a lot of excuse me. I don't know what my problem is today. Coffee. Maybe because it's kind of early in the morning. My throat hasn't wakened up yet. I should do some kind of vocal exercises before I do these things. You know, me, ma, 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 me, whatever. Anyways. What was I talking about? Yeah, I get off the track easily. Squirrel. Ultimate Sewing doesn't usually have batiks in fat quarters. At least I have found. So I went up to Quilter's Cupboard, not knowing if they would have them either, but I thought I'd take a look. And like I said, I needed some retail therapy and I needed to get out. So yeah, $5.50 a fat quarter and I needed 25 of them. That's pricey. But then the staff person there told me, but if you buy 5 or more, they become $5 a piece. I still think that's pricey. However, well, their fabric at that store anyways is pricey. Their prices average about $21 to $22 a meter. It's always been that way, and that's one reason why I don't go there that often. But they do have a selection of fabrics that is a little different from what I get at my usual haunts. But anyways, I'm digressing again. Sorry. So I'm there. Took me half an hour to get there, and actually, this is another aside, but on my way up there, usually Walter drives. I knew where I was going, or at least I thought I did, but I took a different route. Yeah, I went 15 kilometers out of my way. I kept driving and driving and driving, looking for a certain turnoff, and couldn't find it. And I thought, okay, I better pull over and check the GPS. And I did, and yes, I was 15 kilometers away from it. But it was a nice day. It was a nice day for a drive. So, it was an outing. It was an adventure. So anyways, back to the fat quarters. So I got 25 of those, and that's where I also saw the kit for the table runner I already told you about, and picked that all up. And, $200 later, I was done with my retail therapy. So that's my next project. After I quilt my nephew's quilt that I'm giving him, I'm going to start working on that. And as I said, I'm going to work on my other UFOs and get those all, long-armed up. And I just had arrive 8 pantographs that I ordered from Urban Elements. So I'm excited about, doing some more pantograph quilting. Yes, it is not free motion quilting. And yes, I need to do more practice with that because feathers are just not going to quilt themselves. And I'm certainly not going to be able to quilt feathers unless I do some practice. So yeah, but for the sake of getting the UFOs done, at least this is my philosophy. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'm going to use the pantographs because they're faster. At least in my mind, they're faster. Okay, that was all over the place, wasn't it? Yes, it was. So, what's next? Well, this is the part where I'd usually put in a teaser for the Idiot Quilter Presents, one of my interviews. Guess what? I do not have any interviews, and I do not have any lined up. It seems like the interviews have dried up. Sorry about that. But it's not my fault. It's your fault. Yes, it is. I'm talking to you. Yes, you. You. I want you. Sounds like an ad for the American military. Doesn't it? No, but seriously, I need people to interview. And if you've thought about it, stop thinking about it. Send me an email. Let's get this train on the track here, okay? Don't be shy. I've told you that many times before. I don't bite unless you want me to. Yeah, I need some people to interview. So please, 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 please put that on your list of things to do and do it. I want you. Okay, moving on. So now I'm up to one of my creations. Now I showed you this back some time ago when I had first finished it, but now I'm going to look at it in a little bit more detail because this particular piece is not really a quilt. It is a wall hanging, but I did it in a very untraditional way. I fell back onto my mixed media roots for this particular creation. This week's quilt, that is one of my own that I'm going to critique, is not actually a quilt, but a wall hanging. And this was a completely experimental effort. If you take a look at this, I did make it using fabric that I created myself. Now I took several different images and I put them into Photoshop and I layered them and made some layers translucent, and I played with the color combination until I got these particular images. You will notice there are some butterflies in here, which of course, I really like as far as a motif is concerned in a quilt. And I printed these. Now, what did I print them on? I printed them on tear away or cut away stabilizer, one or the other, I can't remember which, but that serves as a fabric. And here's another shot a little closer up, as you can see. And then I put that through my printer, printed on it, and then I took it to my sewing machine, or actually took it to my embroidery machine, and did an embroidered quilting design all along each panel. Then I put the panels together as a banner, and I knew I wanted something for this particular spot, so I made it exactly the right dimensions for that. So in a sense, when I did add some extra quilting to it, you can see down here, just straight line in along the sashing, and in the border I did a wavy line using my walking foot. Also, you may see these little bumps in some of these. This was texture paste, which is something that mixed media people will know what that is for. But basically, I put it through a stencil and added it on top of this, and it's only a very thin layer, and it went through my printer without any problem. I do have to warn you, if you try this technique, that you're very, very careful when you're putting stuff that doesn't usually go through your printer. Make sure it doesn't jam up or anything like that. So, and make sure all of your mediums that you may be putting onto something like this are thoroughly, thoroughly dry. I would leave them overnight, especially in the case of texture paste, because it does take a little bit of time to dry. But overall, I really liked how this turned out. It fits perfectly on this column in my rec room. And yeah, it's an art piece. So that takes me to the online quilt store of the week. And this one is called, I'll have to look at my notes, Needleworks Studio. And it is a place very, very far north from us. So I doubt that I'll ever physically get there. But they have a really good website, have a real great selection of fabrics, as you're going to see. And they have some very unique fabrics that are appropriate for the area that they come from, and that's what I'm going to talk about as well. And I haven't yet ordered anything from them, but I'm thinking of doing so because, well, you'll see why. This week's fabric store online is called Needleworks Studio, and this is located in a place called Cochrane, Ontario, which is northern Ontario. Now, I've heard of Cochrane, but I've never really figured out exactly where it is, so I thought I would. So here in Google Maps, you will see where this little red spot is. That's Cochrane, Ontario. This is where I live, down here. And according to Google, it's about 672 kilometers away from me. So I'm not going to be able to visit their physical store anytime soon. So let's check out what's on their website. And right off the bat, their front page, I like to assess by first impressions. Maybe you should not do that, but I do when it comes to an online store. Now, right here, this caught my eye. Free shipping over $150, excluding sewing machines. Okay, two things then. One, if I buy over $150 Canadian, I'm getting free shipping, which is nice. And they sell sewing machines as well. Now, they obviously have a storefront as well, and they have their hours listed. So let's just travel down a little further. There they have a map of where they're located and their address and their contact information, which I think is a really good thing to have on a front page, because then you know immediately where they're located, and this will help you decide whether or not this is someplace you might want to visit or you might want to order from. They do have a contact for information there, which is great. And you can follow them on all the usual social media. So that's their front page. So let's go up to their index. And we have mystery boxes, beads, hides, and furs. Well, it is in Northern Ontario, so hides and furs, yeah, it fits. Fabric, of course. They do have yarn, so something here for knitters. Sewing and quilting tools, knitting and crochet tools, and then contacts, and you can log in. So let's check out their fabric and see what they're selling this for and what they have to choose from. So as far as being laid out, on the left hand side of the screen you have product categories. They have new and restock, prints and panels, wide back, flannels, pre-cuts, solids, and clearance fabric, and they do list their brands Northcott, Elizabeth Studio, Wilmington, Robert Kaufman, Timeless Treasures. Okay, some that are my favorite in there, and a price range. And color number as well. Okay, so there's quite a bit of indexing going on here, which would really help in finding various products. So let's go up to prints and panels and check out what their cost is. So what do we have here? Got something on, if you want a Looney Tunes rabbit, it's on sale for $5. Oh, some cannabis, cotton, okay, that's okay. Christmas, well, they seem to have a variety here, but their prices are kind of all over the place. $15.79, $19.79, $13.79, $16.79. God, they do tell you when something's sold out, which is really nice. I hate finding something that I want to put into my shopping cart, and when I go to checkout, it tells me it's out of stock. So I'm glad they're upfront about that. That's something that impresses me. $14.79. Okay, and I did check earlier, and this is by the yard. Okay, you know how I feel about that. Canadian company should be by the meter, but nevertheless, their prices aren't bad. $16.79 for and $15.79 for a yard. That's okay. But they do have some pricier ones, as we can see as well. Okay, so it looks like they have a wide selection of fabrics. Just let me check out Timeless Treasures here. Well, it tells you here how many they have, different types. View all. Oh yeah, they've got a whole lot of other manufacturers as well. So a fairly, now the numbers beside each of these are not huge, but they do have a fair selection by the looks of this. Looks like they really love Elizabeth Studio fabrics. So let's check those out and see. I'm not really familiar with Elizabeth Studio fabrics. They seem to have a lot of them. Oh, now if you want some Aboriginal art, Indigenous people art, then here you go. Very nice. Ooh, I really like that one. I may have to, oh, I love that one too. It's got butterflies in. I may have to do some shopping later on today because these are something I have not seen before. So yeah, looks good. Okay, so let's check out something here. Let's do the beads, hides, and furs. Now in Cochrane, I don't think we went anywhere. Just a second here. Here we go. Okay, now in Cochrane, since it is north of Timmins, I suspect that they are catering to an Indigenous population as well with a lot of these fabrics and things that they have. Well, here we go. Indigenous supplies. Let's take a look at that because this is something a little different from other sites that I have reviewed. So they're cotton, beading and jewelry supplies, hides, Sherpa, fur supplies. Oh, they have ceremony supplies like sage and things like that. So that's very, very interesting. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to see what they might charge for a hide. Not that I have any use for it right now. So cow hide, $34 to $76. I guess that would depend on the size or the type. And they have leather, real leather, and they have related supplies for that kind of thing. So if you're into leather work, this might be a good supply source for you. Okay, and just for the knitters out there, let's take a look at their yarn and see what they have in stock for that. Now, I know nothing about yarn, so this just gives you a lowdown for those of you that are into knitting. This is something you would know much more about. And they seem to have a fair selection of knitting supplies as well and yarn. So, mystery box. What's the mystery box? Well, let's check that out. Okay, one mystery box. Product mystery box, mystery quilting box, $160. Was $200. Well, that's pretty pricey for something you don't know what you're going to get. I guess you're taking a chance on that. Uh, I'm almost interested in doing that, but 160 bucks, well, I get free shipping, but you don't really know what's in it, do you? That's why it's a mystery. Do you love surprises? Is it worth 160 bucks? I have a feeling it probably is, but it may have a lot of stuff that I would never use. So no, I'm not going to take the chance on that. So what else? Let's check their sewing and quilting tools and see what kind of things they have there. I'm sure it's probably pretty much the standard kind of things. Tools and gadgets, rulers, buttons, clips and snaps, bias, ribbon and trim, adhesives, needles, interfacing and stabilizer, sewing machine parts. I'm not sure what brand of sewing machines they deal in. Let's see if we can figure that out. Husqvarna and Viking. Okay, well, they're the same company, of course. And that seems to be the brand of sewing machines that they support. Okay, so you're kind of out of luck if you don't have a Husqvarna machine, I guess. But anyways, lots of accessories up there, so that's good to know. What else do they have? Let's go back to sewing and quilting tools and tools and gadgets. Looks like probably the standard kind of stuff. I'm curious about clearance. What are they getting rid of and how good is the sale price? Always like a sale. Embroidery patterns. Okay, the prairie pointer. I have that ruler, actually. Haven't used it much, but I have it. Okay, so there looks like there's some kits for hot pads, table runners, and yeah, a few other things. Clamshell rented lips, template starter set. Okay, so it looks like they have some rulers and things like that as well. So actually, this store looks like it has quite a bit to choose from. $150 free shipping. Okay. And yeah, it had some fabrics that I'm kind of debating now. Maybe I should order a few of those because I really like those. So that's Needleworks Studio, and the link is in the show notes. So that takes us to the end of this week's episode, and I'm sorry that I was all over the place, but as I said, it's kind of early here this morning. I am a morning person though, so really that's not a good excuse. But anyways, my mind has been on other things lately, and if you've seen my vlog, if you've seen Stephen and Walter live, you'll have a good idea of what my mind has been primarily on lately as well. So I'm not going to get into it here. But anyways, thank goodness I have quilting because that keeps me amused. And right now I need to be kept amused. So anyways, I hope you have a great week. I hope you are feeling creative, and I hope you're getting started on your Christmas things because in a few days it'll be October 25th, and October 25th means it's exactly 2 months to Christmas Day. Hard to believe, right? So we'll see you next week. Bye for now.